I never thought the day would come when I'd hear my mother's voice tremble like that. "Please just help us this once," she whispered. And yet, here I was, standing in the same hallway where I once begged them not to turn their backs on me, where they coldly told me I was no longer in the will. The walls still held the scent of that night, leather-bound folders, legal documents, and the bitter perfume my mother always wore when she meant business. I remember my father, stone-faced and silent, while my mother delivered the news like she was reciting a grocery list. "We've decided that the inheritance will go to your brother and sister. We just don't see the need to include you anymore. You've made your choices." Choices? Was choosing to follow my dreams a crime? I had left my corporate job to become a writer, a storyteller, a risk-taker. I wasn't wasting my life. I was reclaiming it. But to them, I had thrown away everything they had worked for. In their eyes, I had betrayed the family legacy. No corner office, no six-figure salary, no real stability. Just ideas, notebooks, and coffee-stained manuscripts. They didn't even flinch. No tears. No regret. Just a cold signature on the final draft of their will, with my name scrubbed off like I never mattered. The first few months were the hardest. I questioned everything, my choices, my identity, my worth. My friends tried to comfort me, telling me I didn't need the money or validation. But when your own parents write you off, it plants something dark inside you. Not just anger. Not just grief. A deep, gnawing emptiness. The kind you can't fill with words or even revenge. I cut off contact. I stopped answering calls. I ignored birthdays and holidays. I didn't even go back when my sister got married. My absence was the loudest scream I could muster. And yet here we were. My phone had rung at 2:14 a.m. That time when the world is silent enough for you to hear your soul breathing. I hadn't seen their number in 2 years. I almost didn't answer. But something about the silence between the rings felt heavy, like fate was daring me to pick up. I pressed answer and waited. It wasn't my dad who spoke. It was my mother. Her voice was cracked, distant, almost unrecognizable. "There's something you need to know," she said. "We're not doing well." I wanted to laugh. Not out of cruelty, but disbelief. "What do you mean, not doing well?" I asked flatly. There was a pause. And then, like a slow confession, she began unraveling the truth. Bad investments. A crumbling business. Legal issues. A lawsuit from a former partner. Their so-called nest egg was gone. The same security they had stripped from me, lost in a matter of months. I stood in my dark kitchen, the refrigerator humming behind me like a heartbeat, as she said the words I never thought I'd hear. "We need your help." My hands went cold. My chest felt hollow. The same people who once told me I wasn't good enough, who erased my name like a smudge, were now asking for a lifeline. And I didn't know whether to feel pity, anger, or power. Because for the first time I held the pen. I didn't answer her request right away. I just listened. Every word felt surreal, like the roles had been reversed in a cruel cosmic joke. She sounded small now. No longer the elegant, calculating woman who lectured me about being responsible. She sounded like a mother. A desperate, scared mother. And a part of me hated how much that still affected me. After the call, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying the way they looked at me during the will meeting. Like I was a burden.
A mistake.
Not their child, but a failed investment.
And now?
Now they needed a bailout from me. I couldn't help but wonder, was this karma? But what is karma when it's your own blood? As dawn broke, painting the sky in pale blues and orange streaks, I found myself pacing the living room. The same room where I had written my first novel, hunched over a shaky table with my laptop and broken dreams. That novel later became a bestseller. They never congratulated me. Not once.
And now?
Now they wanted help because they had no one else to turn to. Was this my moment of revenge? Or a test of compassion? A flicker of memory surfaced. Me as a child, sick with fever, and my mother sitting by my bed, gently stroking my forehead. Her lullabies. Her soft hands. My father, tucking me in. How had we come to this? The sound of birds chirping outside brought me back to the present. I hadn't noticed the tears running down my face. Anger and sadness danced like flames in my chest. I wasn't sure what I was feeling, but I knew this wasn't over. Because something didn't add up. Why now? Why so desperate? And why did I feel like there was something they weren't telling me? Maybe this wasn't just about money. Maybe this was the beginning of a story far darker than I ever imagined. I didn't reply to their call. Not the next day, not the one after. But they kept trying. Missed calls. Text messages. Even emails titled urgent and please read. I didn't open most of them. Something deep inside me resisted. The same instinct that once told me to walk away when they humiliated me in front of the family lawyer. I wasn't just hurt back then. I was invisible to them. Replaceable. Now they were the ones watching time run out. 3 days later, a letter came in the mail. Yes, an actual paper letter, with my name handwritten on the front. I hesitated to open it. It felt heavier than it should have, like grief sealed in an envelope. Inside was my father's handwriting. That shook me. He had always been the silent one, the man who sat at the head of the table, who never raised his voice but could silence a room with a look. The man who didn't say a word when I was cut from the will. But now, here he was, putting pen to paper. The letter wasn't long. Just 1 page. No apologies. No excuses. Just a confession. He said things had started falling apart almost a year ago. First, a failed investment into a biotech startup. Then, my mother's boutique store had to shut down due to liquidity issues. Then, creditors. Threats. Frozen accounts. But the part that stopped my heart cold? He wrote, "Your brother took the last of our savings and disappeared. We haven't heard from him in months." My brother. The golden child. The reason I was always the disappointment. The obedient son who never questioned anything. The one they trusted with everything. And now he was gone. No contact. No explanations. No remorse. I sat there on the couch, letter in hand, trying to process it. The irony was unbearable. The very person they excluded me for had abandoned them. And the person they discarded like trash was the only one still standing. But that wasn't the worst part. There was a second sheet, tucked behind the letter. It was a photo. Faded, wrinkled, clearly ripped out of a folder in haste. It was of their house. Or what was left of it. Windows shattered. Lawn overgrown. A foreclosure notice taped to the door. Spray-painted words on the garage. Pay up. I dropped the photo. My throat went dry. This wasn't just financial trouble. This was ruin. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Why had they gone straight to me? Why not my sister? Why not sell assets? Why not reach out to extended family? Why me after cutting me off? Unless I wasn't just their last hope. Maybe I was the only one they could manipulate. I decided to visit the house. Not for them, but for myself. To see with my own eyes what kind of desperation would make them call the child they once threw away. I pulled up to the old driveway 2 days later. The house was unrecognizable. Overgrown vines. A broken mailbox. And yes, the foreclosure notice still hung like a death sentence on the front door. I didn't knock. I just stood there, watching from the sidewalk. And then she stepped out. My mother. She looked thinner. Paler. Her hair, once meticulously styled, hung in messy strands. Her eyes widened when she saw me, but there was no relief in them. Just shame. And something else. Fear. "Why didn't you come inside?" she called out gently. I shrugged. Didn't know if I was welcome. She walked toward me slowly, arms crossed like she was holding herself together. "I didn't know who else to call," she said, her voice shaking. "Everyone else has turned their backs." I looked around. "Now you know how it feels." She flinched. For the first time in years, she didn't have a comeback. She invited me in. I hesitated, then followed. The inside of the house was worse. Dusty furniture, unpaid bills stacked on every counter. A smell of rot lingered in the air, like something had died slowly here. Not just money, but pride. My father sat in his usual chair, a faded blanket over his legs. He looked older, shrunken, tired. But when he saw me, he tried to straighten up, as if the weight of guilt had finally found his shoulders.
Son, he said, nodding.
Just that. No hug.
No sorry.
Just acknowledgement. I sat across from them. No one spoke for a while. Then I asked, why now? My mother exhaled shakily. Because we have no one left. Your sister moved out of the country. Your brother took everything. Everyone else sees us as toxic. And I'm what? The backup plan. She looked down. You're our only child who still has a soul. That stopped me. A soul? Was that supposed to be flattery? A plea? An apology? I didn't know. What I did know was this. They weren't just here for help. They were hiding something. The way they avoided eye contact. The way my father kept glancing toward the stairs. The way my mother's fingers twitched nervously. Something was off. I stood up. You're not telling me everything. My father's jaw tightened. My mother opened her mouth to protest, but then stopped. I walked toward the staircase. And that's when I heard it. A sound.
Faint.
From upstairs. A creaking floorboard. A muffled cough. I turned to them slowly. Who else is here? I asked. Neither of them answered. But their silence said enough. I climbed the stairs slowly. Each step creaked beneath my weight, echoing like a countdown. In my chest, my heart thudded. Not from fear, but from a sense of awakening. Something was wrong here. Something they didn't want me to know. And yet, I already felt it. The hallway was dark. Dust clung to every surface. A single door at the end was slightly ajar, and through it, I could hear the faintest rustle. Not like someone moving, more like someone hiding. I pushed the door open. The room was cold. Curtains drawn. An old lamp flickered on a corner table. But what caught my eye wasn't the room. It was the figure hunched on the bed. He looked up, and time froze. It was my brother. Hair unkempt, beard overgrown, eyes hollowed by days, or weeks, of sleeplessness. His hands trembled, and beside him was a half-finished bottle of sleeping pills, a cracked phone, and a diary. I stepped back instinctively. What the hell? I breathed. They said you disappeared. He laughed, a bitter, dry sound.
Yeah.
That's the lie they tell people. The truth is, I never left. I couldn't speak. My brain was too busy processing how deep this deception ran. They said you stole everything, I muttered. He nodded. And they let you believe that. Because if you knew the truth, you'd hate them. I blinked. And what is the truth? He leaned back, staring at the ceiling like he was trying to remember the version that wouldn't destroy me. You remember the business? He started. Dad's biotech investment? I nodded slowly. It wasn't a business. Not really. It was a front. A front for what? His jaw tightened. Illegal exports. Pharmaceuticals. Off-the-books trials. They were taking money from labs overseas, using the company as a middleman. Dad thought he could double his returns. But the operation went sideways. I felt my knees weaken. I leaned against the wall, barely able to breathe. They pulled me in, he said, his voice trembling. Said I'd be the face of it. That if anything happened, I'd be the one to take the fall. I was too dumb to say no. He looked me dead in the eye. And when the government got wind of it, they panicked. Tried to burn every record. They even told the press I fled the country. Hid me here, like a criminal. My mind reeled. You've been hiding in this house?
Since January, he said.
Haven't left once. I clenched my fists. And they told me you stole their savings. That you abandoned them. That you ran. He laughed again, this time with something sharp behind it. Of course they did. They needed someone to blame. And you? You were the perfect bait. I felt the heat rise in my chest. I stormed downstairs. My mother was in the kitchen. My father, sitting exactly where I left him. You lied to me, I said flatly. My mother froze. Don't, I said, holding up my hand. Don't pretend this is normal.
You told me he left.
You said he took everything. My father didn't speak, but his jaw was locked. My voice rose. You hid him in this house for months, and the moment your lies started collapsing, you came looking for me like I'm some kind of savior? We did it to protect him, my mother whispered.
Protect. I snapped. Or protect yourselves.
Because if he talks, if the truth comes out, you both go down too, don't you? The silence that followed was answer enough. My mind was racing, not just with rage, but realization. They never reached out because they missed me. They reached out because they were sinking. And now they needed someone else to carry the weight. Why now? I asked. Why bring me into this at all? My father finally spoke. Because you're the only one left who still has your name clean. There it was. Not love. Not guilt. Just strategy. I was the last pawn on their board. And now they were ready to move me. He leaned forward. If you talk to the authorities, say you've recently discovered our financial troubles, maybe we can negotiate immunity. I stepped back like he'd slapped me. You want me to lie? For you? My mother's eyes pleaded.
Please.
If we all go down, what happens to your brother? He won't survive prison. He's not like you. My stomach turned. Not like me? They were right. I wasn't like him. I was stronger, wiser, hardened by years of abandonment. And now, they wanted to cash in on the resilience they once rejected?
No.
I turned to the door. I'm not helping you, I said coldly. My mother choked back a sob. My father stood, voice firm. If you walk away now, don't expect to be welcomed back. I looked him in the eye for the first time in years. I never was. And with that, I left. The wind outside was harsh, but it felt cleaner than the air inside that rotting house. For a moment, I stood by the car, hands trembling. Everything they'd built, the lies, the illusions, the perfect family image, was collapsing. And they were reaching out, not because they loved me, but because they needed someone to sacrifice. But I'd already been sacrificed once. Never again. As I drove off, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The house shrank behind me, and so did the last remnants of the child who once begged for their approval. I wasn't that child anymore. Now, I was the one with the truth, and they were the ones with secrets too dangerous to hide much longer. The night had fallen quietly, like a velvet curtain pulled over a chaotic stage. But within me, nothing was quiet. My phone buzzed again, another message from my mother. Please think about it. We're still your family. That word again. Family. A word that once meant love, warmth, comfort. Now it felt more like a rope used to pull me back into a pit I had just climbed out of. I turned off the phone. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't confused anymore. I was awake. The next morning, I went for a walk through the old neighborhood park. Everything looked the same. Faded benches, rusted swing sets, trees still whispering secrets to the wind. But I had changed. A child had once walked here, hoping to be seen, hoping to be chosen. Now that same soul was choosing itself. And maybe, just maybe, that's what the angels were waiting for all along. Because somewhere deep in this chaos, I could feel something divine moving. Not in thunder, not in fire, but in the stillness of my decision. Underscore 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 underscore. I sat on the bench near the pond where I used to come with my brother before things fell apart. I remember once he asked me, "Do you think we'll ever be normal?" Back then, I lied and said yes. But now I knew better. We were never meant to be normal. We were meant to be true. That meant not playing along anymore. Not swallowing silence when truth begged to be spoken. Not saving people who threw you into the fire and blamed the smoke on you. Suddenly, someone sat beside me. I turned and froze. It was her. The only friend I had kept at arm's length since it all started. She didn't say anything for a long time, just stared at the pond, letting the quiet do its work. Then, finally, I heard what happened. I didn't ask how. News, especially this kind of news, traveled without wings. They want to make you the scapegoat, huh? I nodded. And the savior. In the same breath. She looked at me with gentle eyes. And what are you going to do? For a moment, I didn't answer. Then I whispered, what they couldn't, which is, tell the truth. Her smile was small, but proud. They won't forgive you. I'm not asking for forgiveness. They might turn everyone against you. Let them. What about your brother? I exhaled slowly. That was the only question that still had weight.
He was used, I said.
But he chose to stay silent. That silence hurt people. And if he wants redemption, he needs to earn it, not hide from it. She nodded thoughtfully. I think you already know what you have to do, she said gently. And I did. That evening I made the call. Not to my parents. To the authorities. I gave them everything. The paper trail, the financial statements, the old emails I had found tucked in my father's drawer years ago, the diary my brother had scribbled in. I gave them the full truth. It wasn't vengeance. It was liberation.
For them.
For me. For everyone tangled in this net of deceit. For the first time, I wasn't afraid. I was free. The backlash came quickly. Headlines. Rumors. Accusations from people who'd once smiled at me in church and waved across fences. You betrayed your family. You should have kept quiet. You're tearing everything apart. But in the stillness of my soul, I heard something else. I heard the angels. You were chosen not to protect the lie, but to protect the truth. I wasn't sent into that house to save their legacy. I was sent in to burn the rot, so that something new could rise. A week passed, and then one evening there was a knock at my door. I opened it slowly. It was my brother.
Thin, pale,
red eyes, but standing. He looked down, then looked at me. I'm sorry.
I didn't speak.
I let them use me. I let them lie. I was scared. But you did what I couldn't. I nodded slowly. I had to. I know, he whispered. And I want to make it right. He reached into his coat and handed me a folded piece of paper. I wrote everything. My statement. My confession. You don't have to carry it alone anymore. For a moment, I just stood there, staring at him. He wasn't the brother I remembered. He was something new. Like me. Not broken. Just remade. Later that night, I lit a candle. I didn't know who I was praying to. Maybe God. Maybe the angel who watched me walk through fire and said, "You won't be consumed." Maybe the part of me that had waited all these years to be chosen. But I whispered, "Thank you." Not for the pain, but for the clarity it brought. For the courage it awakened. For the truth it revealed. The story wasn't over. Court dates would come. Faces would change. The world would look at me through different lenses. But I wasn't looking for approval anymore. I had found peace in a place they never searched, inside my own soul, where light doesn't beg to be seen, it simply shines. My beloved soul, you who have walked through fire and chosen not to become ash. You who were betrayed by blood and yet chose not to bleed bitterness. I watched you from the very beginning, even in the silence of the rooms you cried in, even when no one knocked, even when no one believed you, even when they looked you in the eyes and said you were the problem. I was there. You didn't know it, but I stood behind every locked door. Every moment you wanted to scream, but didn't. Every breath you took when your lungs felt like stone. That was me, holding you upright. Not because you were weak, but because you were destined to be more than they saw. You thought they exposed you, didn't you? You thought their lies ruined you. But no, child. I was the one revealing them. I needed you to see the truth, not just about them, but about you. You kept asking, why would God let this happen to me? And I whispered, again and again, because what's inside you is stronger than what tried to destroy you. You are not fragile. You are forged, not just shaped but strengthened, not just hurt but healed, not just silenced, but now you speak with fire in your voice. Let me tell you something that might shake your heart. The betrayal was permitted, but the breakdown was not the end. It was a doorway
to the real you.
The version of you that knows how to draw boundaries and call things by their names. The version of you that no longer flinches when someone raises their voice. The version of you that doesn't shrink to fit a room too small for your light. Yes, that version is dangerous to those who used to control you. But to heaven? You are divine rebellion clothed in grace. And you will no longer apologize for being true. You cried asking, will they ever regret it? But let me ask you something deeper. Will you ever go back to that place where your worth depended on their moods? Where your value was based on what you could hide? Where love was a transaction, not a sanctuary? No, beloved, you won't. Because what was stolen will be returned. Not by them, but by me. You may not see it yet, but there is a restoration coming. Your name, once spoken in shadows, will be declared in light. Your story, once shamed, will become someone else's survival map. And those who laughed at your pain, they will one day learn from your strength. Yes, there's still healing to do. There are nights ahead where you'll still remember the pain. But pain now walks behind you, not ahead. You've wrestled with your past and made peace with your shadow. You are no longer at war with yourself. You are standing where most never make it, the other side. And here, I give you a promise. You will never be silenced again. You will speak. You will rise. You will be the answer to someone else's desperate prayer. Because you have become what the storm could not erase. A messenger. The world won't understand all that you endured. That's not their job. You didn't survive for applause. You survived because destiny was waiting. And now, it is your turn to become dangerous. Not with revenge, but with truth. With compassion. With boundaries that do not bend for dysfunction dressed as tradition. Let them talk. Let them twist. But you, beloved, walk forward. You've been validated by heaven. And no human court can undo what has been sealed in spirit. Look at you now. Breathing. Moving. Choosing peace even when chaos chases you. This is your divine proof. You are not the story they told about you. You are the light they tried to cover.
And it didn't work.
Because here you are still standing. Not because they spared you, but because I spared you. Because your purpose outruns their plans. And your name? It's already written in places they can't erase. So go ahead.
Rest. Speak. Write. Build.
Love again. But this time not from lack, but from overflow. This time, don't dim yourself to keep someone else comfortable. Shine so brightly that only the truth can stand next to you. And when they say, you've changed, smile. Because that's the point. You were never meant to stay broken just to keep others from feeling guilty. You were meant to become a living miracle. And now you are. The angels surround you still. They sing in the language of freedom every time you breathe without fear. They guard the doors you're walking through. And they smile because finally, you believe in your own worth. Heaven rejoices, not because you were perfect, but because you were brave. Because even with a trembling voice, you chose to speak. Even with shaking hands, you carried truth like a sword.
And
that is what makes you divine. Welcome home, beloved. The worst is behind you. The truth has set you free.
And now
you live. Now you lead. Now you rise.